So Amy Coney Barrett is officially a Supreme Court justice. The vote was mostly down party lines. I think it was actually completely down party lines. 53 votes in favor. We used to have the filibuster, and they would have needed 60 votes. Now we no longer have the filibuster, and so she got on with 53 votes. As a result of that, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people on social media saying, well, I mean, there's literally nothing the Democrats could do, so, like, we can't be mad. But that's just factually wrong. There was plenty that the Democrats could have done, and they chose not to do it, and they chose not to do it simply for political reasons, namely the upcoming election. They made a calculation that, hey, if Amy Coney Barrett gets on the court fast, then, you know, you saw it last night. The second she was approved, it was like in unison, every Democratic politician that I follow, and I'm sure a lot of the ones I don't follow, tweeted the same thing at the same time about, well, I guess you got to go vote. I guess you got to go vote. See, I mean, let's see what happens. See what happens. This is when Republicans win. This is what happens. So what do you want me to tell you? The only solution is to go vote. Now, I'm going to explain to you why that argument in this instance is actually one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard in my life. Because people who say that really have no understanding of how significant and colossal this occurrence was. So Amy Coney Barrett getting on the court is not just another standard Democratic loss, which we're kind of used to at this point. Amy Coney Barrett getting on the court is really a stake through the heart of even the idea of the most minimal positive change you can imagine. So, first of all, let me tell you what the Democrats actually could have done, what they could have done. There's a bunch of things they could have done, but so I'm quoting from Jacobin here. This is an article that came out, I believe, in late September. They say, for instance, they could have insisted on short-term, week-by-week budget bills to grind the process of passing appropriations to a crawl. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had that option, but took it off the table. She took it off the table. By the way, this one isn't even a difficult thing to do to jam up the process. That's not even difficult. She immediately took it off the table. Ask yourself why. However, House lawmakers could also pass other measures, such as articles of impeachment or war powers resolutions, that would automatically be prioritized on the Senate schedule under existing rules. In the Senate itself, the memo says Democratic senators should explore filing so-called fast-track measures that could also take precedent on the Senate schedule and push off a court confirmation vote. I've already given you like 3 things they could have done, 3 separate avenues to go about jamming the process. Again, they didn't do it. Ask yourself why they chose not to do it. So the memo says, this was a Democratic memo that was floating around in D.C. where they were explaining, hey, here's a bunch of ways, if you really wanted to, you could stop somebody getting on the court. Several fast-track statutes, including the Congressional Budget Act, the Congressional Review Act, the War Powers Act, and the Arms Export Control Act, give any senator the right to move to proceed to a vehicle and force a roll call vote and sometimes a period of debate. For example, any senator could submit a concurrent resolution on the budget, and by precedent, if action has not yet been taken on a budget resolution for the coming fiscal year, then the resolution would be immediately placed on the calendar. Once on the calendar, any senator could move to proceed to the resolution, forcing a roll call vote on the motion to proceed. Meanwhile, resolutions of disapproval under the CRA can be petitioned out of committee with 30 signatures after 20 calendar days. Such measures could be filed in mass. Is that how you say that? In mass? In mass? I don't know how you pronounce that. Here, I have more for you. The elimination of the supermajority requirement to break filibusters of Supreme Court nominees has left the minority party with limited procedural options, but that's not to say there are no options other than trying to persuade Republicans that the political consequences of pushing ahead with Trump's nominee could outweigh the benefits. Again, this is still from Jacobin here. Since the chamber largely runs on unanimous consent, any Democratic senator could, for instance, gum up the works of the Senate by objecting to everything else McConnell wants to do, forcing Republicans who are up for re-election to spend additional time casting procedural votes. The Democratic minority has generally gone along with unanimous consent agreements, setting up predictable schedules of votes, especially on many of Trump's judicial nominations. Democrats could also seek to enforce a Senate rule barring committees from meeting past the the first 2 hours of a day and objecting to all kinds of routine business, from the naming of post offices to the declaration of holidays. Another option could be moving forward with impeaching Attorney General Bill Barr. As Business Insider notes, impeachment would compel the U.S. Senate to hold a trial at a time when it has precious few days left on the calendar to confirm a replacement for Ginsburg. By the way, another thing that Nancy Pelosi could have done, she could have leveraged a government shutdown. She chose not to do it. So, the point here is, they had many things they could have done to jam up the process. They didn't do any of it. In fact, it was the opposite. They had a hearing, it went through, it may have been record time, and now Amy Coney Barrett is on the court, and they instantly go out there and try to fundraise off it and try to pump up voter turnout. Now.
All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, folks, not sure what happened here this past week, but I am sorely disappointed. I mean, I have been promised a fascist authoritarian coup directed by Vladimir Putin himself for 4 years now, and I'm getting a little impatient waiting to see how it all goes down.